We're traveling back to a time when Earth looked completely different from the world we know today. Around 200 million years ago, vast oceans and prehistoric landscapes were home to countless strange and fascinating creatures. But deep beneath those ancient oceans lived a monster so enormous that its size would astonish us even today. Its name was Ichthyotitan severnensis. Ichthyotitan was a gigantic ichthyosaur, a fully marine reptile. At first glance, it may have looked like a strange combination of a giant whale and a dolphin, but despite its appearance, it was not closely related to either one. Ichthyosaurs were reptiles. Their ancestors were land-dwelling reptiles that gradually evolved and adapted to life in the ocean, eventually becoming highly specialized marine animals. Scientists estimate that Ichthyotitan severnensis may have reached around 25 meters, or more than 80 feet in length. That would make it one of the largest marine reptiles ever discovered. Here's another way to imagine it. Picture 6 average-sized cars lined up bumper to bumper. That's roughly the kind of length we're talking about with this enormous creature. And its size becomes even more incredible when we look at its head. If this giant animal could somehow have been positioned vertically with its head pointing straight upward, it could have reached a height comparable to an 8-story building. Perhaps the most astonishing evidence of its enormous size comes from its jaw. One of the fossilized jaw bones discovered from this animal was more than 6 feet long. Perhaps the most astonishing evidence of its enormous size comes from its jaw. One of the fossilized jaw bones discovered from this animal was more than 6 feet long. Scientists believe Ichthyotitan lived around 202 million years ago, near the very end of the Triassic period. At that time, dinosaurs were still in the early stages of their evolution on land. Primitive dinosaurs and other reptiles were beginning to spread across the ancient continents. But beneath the waves, an entirely different world was unfolding. The oceans were filled with ancient fish, marine reptiles, and enormous predators. And among them was Ichthyotitan, one of the largest marine reptiles known from that ancient world. There is, however, an important mystery. Scientists have not yet discovered a complete skeleton of Ichthyotitan. Instead, they have recovered enormous jaw fragments and other fossil evidence. Even so, by studying related ichthyosaurs and comparing their anatomy, scientists have been able to reconstruct what this giant animal may have looked like. Its body was long, streamlined, and perfectly adapted for moving efficiently through the water. It had 4 powerful paddle-like flippers that helped control its direction and movement beneath the waves. These flippers were perfectly adapted for life in the open ocean. And at the back was a powerful tail. By moving its tail from side to side, the enormous reptile could propel its massive body through the water. But perhaps its most intimidating features were its gigantic head and powerful jaws. Imagine swimming through the darkness of a prehistoric ocean when suddenly a massive reptilian head appears in front of you. Despite its enormous size, Ichthyotitan was not a fish. It could not breathe underwater using gills. Instead, like other ichthyosaurs, it had lungs. That meant it had to regularly return to the surface to breathe, much like modern whales and dolphins. No matter how long it stayed underwater, eventually it had to come back up for another breath. After spending time hunting and swimming in the depths, the giant reptile would have needed to rise toward the surface, break through the water, take a breath, and then disappear once again beneath the waves. And here comes another fascinating part of its biology. Ichthyosaurs did not lay eggs on beaches. Instead, they gave birth to live young directly in the ocean. But how did scientists discover a giant animal like Ichthyotitan in the first place? The story begins with enormous jaw fossils discovered along the coast of England. In 2016, a remarkable fossil jaw fragment was discovered, attracting the attention of paleontologists.
In 2024, researchers confirmed that the fossils represented a distinct new species. It was given the name Ichthyotitan severnensis.